everybody. This is Jannike from Wisdom from North, and I'm currently at the Body, Mind, Spirit Festival in Norway. And I'm sitting here with Osiris Montenegro, who is a soul counselor, and he's having several talks here this weekend. And one of the talks is authenticity and the drive to wholeness, I think was correct.
Towards wholeness, yes.
Welcome back to the show. I've interviewed you several times. It's always such a thrill to meet you every year. So I would love to speak about what you're going to speak about in the talk. And you're saying that we often have these false perceptions of ourselves, which is connected to being real and authentic. So, and I know actually Eckhart Tolle speaks about this too. So I was reading that this morning actually. So. From your perspective, false perceptions of ourselves, what is that?
Well, for example, believing that you are a self-image, like that you tell yourself something about, who you think you are. That will not be an authentic expression of you. So let me take it from what I call authenticity. Being authentic is basically a expression of your nature. And the less conditioned the expression, the more authentic it is. So
Sorry, can you say that?
The less conditioned, the less that you have an idea of yourself versus just being yourself, right? So when an infant is hungry, they are authentically screaming. Or when they are hurting, they are authentically, tensing up, right? And so we have these dimensions of our being, and the physical, of course, is the most authentic because it is what it is. And so when we begin to add the mental level to that, which is easily influenced by the relationship with the environment, we, for example, develop a self-concept later on in childhood. But at first, we identify with the body, and then we identify with a mind concept, a name, for example. And then whatever, father and mother are relating like to the body-mind, right? So by the time we become an adult, we have a positive self-image, which is what we present to the world, how we would like to be seen. But behind that, we have, of course, the negative self-image, which is the opposite of that. And so in being authentic, people think that they really have to polish the good self-image, and get people to like them. And in doing that, the more that you deny this part, the more it contracts, the more it wants to express itself.
The more you deny what part?
The opposite of what you think you are.
Okay.
So if I think that I'm a great lecturer, then I might have a fear that I'm the worst one that there is. And then if I really am not confident about, knowing something and sharing it, from my heart, then I will go out there and I will be nervous, but I will smile to hide, the fear. But as soon as, the audience reacts in a way that I think is not favorable, then the fear will get stronger. And so now I have, these two versions of myself, one which is afraid and the other one that is really afraid, right? And they are, not working together. So authenticity, first of all, means that you become aware of the conflict that you carry inside. And we all have conflicts because our parents, they like some parts of us and not others. Now, that is very innocent. For example, as soon as you learn language, or even before that, one of the words that you hear the most is no. Now, what is a child doing when they say no? They're being themselves. They're exploring. They're, doing what a child does. They're expressing, their joy or their curiosity. Later on, maybe their anger, hitting another sibling or something like that. But the parent comes in and they blast energetically the child's expression with a negative energy that makes them tense up. And so that's what begins to create this is, I shouldn't be like this, I shouldn't be like this, I shouldn't be like this, right? So begin to memorize what not to do. And on the other hand, if your parents, they really like something that you do naturally, and you notice that they like that, so then you'll do that a lot, right? So you begin to create, how I should be, how I shouldn't be, right? And sometimes, how you were when your parents approve of you was natural, but perhaps not the best virtue that you have as a soul, perhaps not the best expression of your being. But if your parents zero in on that one, that's the one that you focus on. And even positive things you begin to deny because you want the approval, you want the love, you want the connection. So we develop these ways of being that are not really original, that are not really authentic, that are really compensations because we're relating to life in a way that doesn't feel safe. So as an adult, becoming authentic means that you confront your fears, you get real with what is as it is, first and foremost. Um, and that way, if you come to any situation with an open mind and open heart, energetically you're allowing it to be as it is, and then you can influence it. And that's how you want to relate to the world. You don't want to tell the world how to be, right? The world, it is what it is. Everybody has their own way of doing things. So wholeness means that instead of denying a part of me because it wasn't acknowledged or approved of, I recognize that there are feelings of hurt, for example. And then you also, being authentic means that you don't carry regrets or, hatred or a desire for revenge. That's also not authentic. That's still a reaction. And so in becoming whole, then we have this process where you become aware of how you feel, first and foremost, right? Because the body doesn't lie. Body is always, in present time, expressing what you're thinking and feeling. And so if you go to the feelings, one of the things that your common sense, via your heart, will always inform you is what is appropriate and what is not appropriate. Now, as a child, that's where, some parents do a good job and some parents don't do such a good job, right? Because they need to teach, respect, discipline, which are ways that you learn to behave appropriately. But if that was given, with fear or with anger, then you associate those feelings with the behavior, right? And so we want to be able to heal that, recognize that in my case, my mother had, 4 other kids, and I was the one that was always, very energetic. And so after a while, I was too much for her. Or I was perhaps, taking some of her stress, and acting it out with my sisters. And so then she will come in, and just, basically discipline my behavior. So if I have, this, for example, authority is dangerous, or authority is bad, or you can't trust authority, then I'm going to develop, a rebellion against my own authority, right? So then I'm going to have like a rebellion going on all the time, and only a tyrant is going to go in there and say, okay, now that's enough, and now you do this, and everybody else shut up, right? And many people basically live like that. They have a voice that is basically monitoring everything that they do and how they do it and giving approval or disapproval. As you become more authentic, that noise fades away.
What fades away?
The noise, that inner
noise.
chatter, that negative thinking, that punishing voice that is basically making sure that you don't get in trouble. But by doing that, you feel like you're already in trouble. Right? Because perhaps, you really want to express something, but you have a voice that says, no, you can't say that. Or for example, somebody, may insult you, and you may feel that you want to punch them. Now, in that case, it's good that you refrain from doing that. But if you do that, what you do is that you then become hateful because you can't express how you feel. Now, how you really feel is that you're angry, so then you use that energy to suppress your anger. And that becomes a problem, when it's appropriate to be angry, but you have a program that says
You can't be
you
angry.
can't be angry, right?
And it's all about acknowledging that angry feeling, right? Accepting that angry feeling, acknowledging it, not suppressing it.
Well, that begins to be too mental, right? So this is what we're looking for. When I say a drive towards wholeness is that when you're really whole and complete,
But is that possible to become whole and complete completely?
no, it is an ongoing process of evolving and developing. But there are ways where you don't have to think about how to be, right? It becomes second nature that if somebody, needs help and you are, inspired to help, you do. But at other times, when you don't feel the call, then you don't. A person who's not authentic will just do it because that's what they do, right? So likewise, sometimes it's really appropriate to be angry, and that means that you raise your voice, you get more intense, and you speak with authority. Well, if I have a self-image that I'm a nice person, then I could never do that, right? Here in Norway, for example, people, they're very careful about how they express themselves, right? And so it's not only being able to express how you feel, but know that the feeling that you're having are in an interaction with another, and that how they feel is also affecting you. So part of being whole is that you have an integrity to your being. You're not like a very easy an open door where anything can come in and somebody takes something out, right? So wholeness also has to do with some kind of a boundary. We call it integrity, or for example, the way that I talk about it in the lecture is that we develop core values. And if you have a core value that you respect and you're loyal to, and is incorporated.
So you can actually, I'm just thinking how we can make this practical. Sit down and go through a process in yourself and see if you can discover what are my core values. Because that's not easy always to know your core values, but that's a process. And then you become aware of that, and then you start to integrate that and live your values. Is that an idea?
Yeah, but it's a lot easier than that. Yeah, for example, come to the lecture if you have time. I could ask a person, just to begin to describe what they like and what they don't like.
Okay.
I mean, as simple as, you can begin with food, for example, then you can, move to, what kind of entertainment you like, right? And within a few questions, you could begin to see that there is something that is either reactive or very natural. So the ego has reactive values. It values more. It values control. It values, competition and winning, right? Whereas the soul, for example, it values, the experience of a game, not necessarily winning, right? Or, for example, the soul appreciates, listening. So you could be very quiet and take somebody in, right? So what is natural to us is easy to see for somebody who's trained, to see what's natural. And it's also very easy to see what is not natural. Like, for example, um,
Yeah, I still feel like it takes some processing. It takes some contemplation. Like, okay, is freedom important for me in my life, or is passion, or is influence, having influence in this world, is that a value for me? I think that's not something you can just be like, yeah, sure, that's a value.
well, in your case, for example, when I see you interviewing people and sharing information, I can see a number of values that you value, right? For example, to influence the environment, to influence people, that makes you that you value leading, you value wisdom, you value joy and happiness, you value nature. So if you just observe a little bit, now a person who's not very aware of themselves, they need feedback. So they will benefit, from an interaction with somebody who is interested, who is curious, who has no agenda, and in that way, the interaction with them will draw out whatever it is relevant, right? Whatever is important. So yeah, at the beginning, I think that for people who are not very aware of what it means to be real, to be authentic, it's very simple. You could notice that when you are safe, how do you feel inside? Well, we feel at ease. There is a sense of flow. There is a sense that the whole body is connected. But as soon as you begin to feel more defensive, more afraid, then the body begins to break up into tension patterns, and a knot gets here or one here, and then the tension here. So if you are observing that, for example, when I work with clients, that's one of the things that I do. I said, okay, so I'll say time out. Okay, so bring your attention to your belly. Sometimes I'll even say, what are you feeling right here? Because I'm feeling they're not in my belly, because I'm empathic with their experience. Or I can say, how is your jaw right now, right?
Sure.
Jaw. Like there are certain things that when people tense it, it's easy to feel. The diaphragm. Most people walk around with a tense diaphragm, and so when I interact with them, I can just sense their body, and so I can just ask a question, and that becomes the feedback. Because then they go and they sense, how am I, and then the next thing that I do. So, what are you thinking that is making you tense? Many people don't even know what it is that they're feeling. Right, so I start, basic. Okay, so fear is cold and anger is hot. So is your belly warm, cool, hot, cold? Is it moving, or is it naughty, or is it, just like relax, right? So that's a very important step, that you need to be aware of your body. How is the body feeling? And you have to transcend the habit of thinking about your feelings. And that's why you have to really slow it down and get people to basically sense, right? Like sense, not feel, but sense. This is sensations, feelings, emotions.
Okay, sensations, feelings,
Emotions.
emotions.
So when you are at ease, which means that you're authentic, right? Because you feel whole and complete in that moment. The awareness that is coming into you is sensations, temperature, pressure. Um, if you become more soulful, light, colors, smells, the senses, they continue to include more of what's around. But as you get more gross, then you get down to just five senses, right? And then eventually only what you feel inside. But you can sense a lot outside, like I'm doing right now. So if you are beginning to call something a feeling, then something is beginning to form, right? And then that's where we have, an ascending, expanding experience, or a descending, contracting experience. So anything that contracts, such as an emotion, not only means that the tension is getting stronger, but the mind is also associating something right now with something from the past. So the more intense the emotion, the farther back in time you've gone, to bring back, this is how I feel and this is what I do.
Because the emotions come from the past,
You are manufacturing in this very moment.
but you're reacting to like through old habits, or something is triggered within you.
Yeah, so the emotion is happening right now. And the trigger is something that you saw or heard or felt externally. But in half a second, your mind went through the library of the past and found a match in something.
Right.
And that's where you find a self-image. Now, the image that you found is totally unconscious. It's outside of your awareness. And it's usually, like I said, some kind of interaction with an authority figure. And if in the interaction, the feeling was, I'm not safe, I'm not wanted, I'm gonna be hurt, I'm not good enough. That creates fear, and then fear triggers aggression, so you will get angry. But if I have a problem with being angry, then I'll get very afraid, and so then I'll smile, right? And an extreme will be, I'm also an acupuncturist, so in Chinese medicine we call it inappropriate laughter. People laugh when they're afraid. Children do a lot, right? Or they shake, So this is the energy of fear. So anything that is a feeling or a physical thing that is very intense means that unconsciously you went back in time into your memory banks and then trigger how to behave or what to do, and then that's how you're behaving right now.
But this is very interesting, and this has many layers. I feel
Yes,
like,
yes, it does.
because
Yes, it does.
I was just thinking that we think 90% of the same thoughts every day, and how I see it, or what I currently believe, is that the thought comes first and then the feeling comes. And if we're thinking almost the same thoughts every day, then we're feeling the same thoughts every day. And most of those thoughts are often repetitive, like they're coming back. Like, so when I'm saying the same thoughts, I mean we're thinking the thoughts that we thought yesterday and the day before that. And then that means that we're also feeling the feelings that we felt yesterday and the day before that. So our emotional body is a lot lingering in the past.
If you're not authentic.
Right.
Because if you're authentic, you don't have a preconception of how this next moment is going to be. You're just totally open to what's arising between us right now. And so, you are in real time, creating the experience. So, so here is where it's important to have a little bit of self-awareness. So if you are identified with your mind, and so your identity is mental, we call it the ego identity. The ego identity is who you think you are, right? And then as soon as you have that, then you're going to have the duality, the good parts and the bad parts, right? When you're authentic, you don't get to these extremes that this is good and this is bad. You live in this space where, if life moves you to be kind, then you are kind. If life moves you to be strong, like in tough love, then you say, no, you can't do that, right? Now, you can't do that. It's a strong boundary. And kindness is like very open, enveloping energy, right? And so you can't say that this is good and this is bad, right? Because having a boundary that says you can't do that, you can't, take my money or something like that, right? That's a good thing too. So we need to get outside of this, idea that there is a good and a bad thing to do. And what I teach is that there is the appropriate thing. What's appropriate right now, right? And it's always about, what in this moment, what is appropriate, right? Now, if you have trauma that you haven't integrated, then as soon as you attempt to be appropriate or authentic, the fear coming back when you were told that's not okay, that's going to come up. Now, the beauty of engaging with somebody who has expertise and care is that they will draw that out of you in a safe environment and point out the fact that okay, so you appear to be struggling with making a boundary or asking for something or saying no to something. Yes, I am. Okay, so what does that remind you of? And if the person, is in the flow, and what I say to people is like, I ask a question, and as soon as I do, people think about an answer. And I say, no, don't do that. When I give you a question, repeat the question to yourself and listen for the answer. Very different way of accessing the inner world, right?
That's nice.
Yeah, and it works very well because again, the body doesn't lie. Now, if you really are interested, you keep asking and then more answers come about the same question and some of them are completely opposite. And that's how you see the contradictions, that the personality, because of the history, lives in this very confused world that sometimes it's okay to be like this, sometimes it's not, so I better not do anything, right? And so little by little, you begin to realize that, okay, so that was the behavior that you experienced then, but with all of these life experiences now, you can say that, well, but now I can say no to something. Or now I can say, can I have that, right? Now, if you're still afraid to ask for what you want, then again, that goes back, okay, so how were you treated that you feel that you don't deserve something? And many times, like you were literally told, you can't have that, but you saw somebody else have it, right? And so we create these images of, how life is and how we should be and how we shouldn't be. And if you are becoming whole and authentic, you don't use your mind to be yourself. You just look, listen, feel, and respond. Yeah, one of the ways that I help people become more self-aware is that I teach them how to be present. And so, and there are different ways that I have figured out over the years, but one of the most fundamentals that anybody can use is that you bring these three aspects of you that are on all the time: observing, listening, and sensing. When those three come together, you are becoming present because there is no thinking, but there is an intelligence inside that can make sense of the stimulus that is coming in. So for example, if I'm looking at you and I don't have an agenda, but I'm really curious about, your facial expression, and again, I can sense, tension and all of that, and I'm listening to what you're saying. The moment I become very present to you, then I, as an ego, disappear, and all that is left is my presence, which is the same as your presence, right? But in two different locations with two different points of view. Now, when I work with couples, for example, one of the things that I teach them to do is to trade places. So now you've heard their point of view, now you go and you stay in that place and tell me, how does that feel, right? So feel what it's like to be there, right? And so again, if you engage your senses, in this case with couples, for example, you do a little bit of pretending, right? But it's not really pretending, it's like being empathic. So what is it like when people receive you? Because you could be friendly or you could be nasty. So what do you think it's like, when you're nasty, right? And so if you are authentic, you can open up, and say, oh yes, actually I've carried a little bit of resentment, and so then the word will be, okay, resent, sent to the past.
So you dare to say it, and then you can let it go?
Well, yeah, but you need to know what is it that you're letting go and who is it that was involved, right? And after a while, it's always father or mother or whoever played that role, right? But you need to be specific, right? So that, for example, when you do work on forgiveness, right? You can't just say that, okay, I forgive you. No, here you have to, for example, at a soul level, understand that, I made enough choices to meet this experience. So half of it is absolutely my creation. So when I own that, now I can thank you because I learned something about you, but especially about me. And so forgiveness means to give forth understanding. I understand now what happened, and I own my part in it.
That's a deeper topic, forgiveness, a huge one. We can take that next year.
Yes!
Thank you so much, Osiris. I know you're having a talk very soon. Thank you so much, and all the best with your work.
It's my pleasure, and it's good to see you again. And good to see you too.
Thank you so much for watching. Much light from Norway. Bye-bye. Hi everybody, thank you so much for watching this video. If you liked it, please subscribe and click the thumbs up and click the bell in order to get notifications of my new videos. Now I also have a free gift for you. If you want to become a conscious co-creator, you can click on my free meditation below called Meet Your Future Self, where you have the possibility to co-create with the highest future version of you.